Commissioner Chang.
As the first voter, yes.
Laverde. Poblet. Simon Weisberg. Sotovihil.
As the fifth voter, yes.
Yes.
Townley. Townley. Thank you. Tragub. Solosky.
Yes.
As the last voter. Thank you.
Information items, announcements, etc. Executive Director, I think, was going to say I think all of these items are yours. Which ones do you want to comment on, or what?
Very few, unless they're questions. I would just want to update the board on the first item, the update on the staffing model. We have conducted interviews and made selections for two positions. They're temporary positions because there aren't current lists. One of them is to, at least on a temporary basis, backfill for Shanae's position, and then because there is not an established list for the hearing examiner position. And then the other position that was authorized by the board either in August or September. We've basically an offer has been made and I believe accepted. Once I know tomorrow, hopefully I get confirmation that both positions have been accepted. I'll tell you who it is and describe the people to you. But my hope is that by the middle of November, we'll have two additional folks on board. I believe the item 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6. I'm sorry, 4 and 5. Those items, unless there are questions, I think they speak for themselves.
Yeah, Commissioner Townley.
Yeah, I'd like to note the short-term rental. I'd like to let people know that this is a tally of how many short-term rental operators have become legalized under the city's recent short-term rental program. Right now, fully legal are 305. So that means 305 Airbnbs or whichever online company one chooses to use, and up to 393 possibly approved owners or units. So that means that there's less than 50%, probably maybe only 30% of the Airbnbs that are currently being listed online are actually legal. So that means that customers have no protection. That means that there are units that are being possibly yanked off the rental market in an extremely tight and overdriven housing emergency type of market. And that's a real issue. So hopefully the city will be able to deal with these scofflaws quickly and harshly.
Yes, Laverde, go ahead.
I have a question for Mr. Brown or Mr. Kelekian. So right now, can you explain, or do you know this, if the city of Berkeley has any relationship with Airbnb regarding the list of all the units that are being rented on Airbnb? Do you know what the status is on that?
I don't know.
Mr. Brown?
We can certainly ask them.
We don't know. So we don't know if the city of Berkeley is trying to find out that information from Airbnb?
My understanding is that, and I might be wrong, so I say this with some trepidation, my understanding of the arrangement with Airbnb is that Airbnb collects the, for anything rented through them in Berkeley, they require the city tax, and they collect that, and they, I don't know if once a month or quarterly, pay the city. The city has the ability, I believe it's either once a year or once every 2 years, to audit those records. But Airbnb, at least under the initial agreement, was not turning over a list of, we collected, $3,000 from Mr. Townley and $2,000. So there was no way of the city at least under the initial agreement from, thank you for that contribution, by the way, for the city to make a one-to-one connection between the amount collected or not.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. A question and a request. What does closed mean on the application status?
Oh, good question.
I think I know, but let me just make sure. I believe closed, so oftentimes an owner or an applicant, it's not necessarily an owner, an applicant will not provide all the information that we need to make a determination or that the city needs. And again, this is both the planning department, it's a combined planning department and rent board list. So some of these, like if you look a little higher up above, need applicant response. Some of these were still under review, so we haven't even processed them. In 7 cases, the owner has, or the applicant has withdrawn their application. And I think after a sufficient amount of time, and it's a very long amount of time after multiple requests, if the information that's outstanding hasn't been provided, it'll just be closed.
Okay.
So I think it's administratively, it hasn't been denied or approved, but it's if somebody hasn't withdrawn it but isn't complying and we've heard nothing, I think we just close it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The request is for going forward, if staff might be willing to provide last month data so that we can do a side-by-side comparison of what has changed in the past month.
Okay.
Oh, right, that makes sense.
And that was an assent, right? Jay, you're okay with that?
I see no reason why we can't do it, but if there's a problem, I'll let you know, but I think we can
Right.
do that.
It's just pasting
Yeah.
the previous month's table each time.
Yeah, we'll see the small increments of approved.
All right, good. Anybody else on this? If not, Jay, where'd you leave off? 6, 7 or something, somewhere?
I was about to jump to 6 unless there's questions about any of the others. I want to direct your attention to the fall newsletter. I believe it goes to the post office today, so we hope in the next day or two people will start actually receiving it. It's very pretty and it's full, large size. It's a little hard to read in your packet, but I think there's a ton of great material there, and I just wanted to thank a number of people who worked extraordinarily hard. Much of this was done a while ago, but it was delayed because of turnover in staff, and I just wanted to thank and call out the extraordinary efforts of a number of folks. Sherry Shoquist, our former director, for her initial inspiration. Michelle Burns, Manreet Gill, Omar Kalimbas, and Brendero for their work as writers of some of these articles. Leaf for a lot of the things on the annual report by the numbers page, and some of the other data was done by Leaf. And Nick did an amazing job in doing the design, the graphics, the typesetting, and the layout. And of course, Amy for not only doing the editing, the copy editing, but also coordinating with the printer. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy when I went in one day about 3 weeks ago and said, we just need to get this thing out. And I'm really, really proud of how people stepped up and got together and were able to put this out. So, and I would, not necessarily tonight, but I welcome feedback on how we did the annual report. Because I know over the years there's been a lot of discussion about trying to capture the work we do in a way that's easily digestible. As we discussed in the past, that page, possibly an expanded version of that page, will be turned into a brief handout. So when people come in and say, gee, what does rent control do for me, or what do I pay the fees for, we can provide that at least as a starting point for people's understanding. I think everything else is, I'm going item 7, 8, I assume the outreach committee might want to touch on some of these things, but item 9 9 and 11 and 12, Commissioner Laverde already spoke about. They're 3 really amazing reports that have come out in the past month and a half, and I really encourage board members to look through them. I believe the rest are articles that I found informative, and I wanted to pass along to make sure the board and the public had access to.
I wanted to comment on number 11, the UCLA Luskin Center for History and Policy, and the report called "People Are Simply Unable to Pay Rent," what the history tells us about rent control in Los Angeles. And what was really interesting in that report is that if you've ever been inside the rent board offices, you'll see an old Uncle Sam image of saying rent control protects you. And it looks like UCLA copied Jay's history of talking about rent control, because rent control was a federal law during World War II, and rent control was also imposed by President Nixon. So it's very interesting to see that they've copied Mr. Kalekian's history reports, and that's really nice to see.
I think it's public domain, but actually, it's some of the graphics are also on page 2 of the newsletter. So, without even speaking to each other, we somehow, I guess, shared a vision. What can I say?
Yeah.
I mean, just imagine, how often does Cal, UCLA, and USC agree on something?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
That's all I had.
So I want to thank you for these, and I do want to comment just briefly on number 13. The housing prices are resegregating the Bay Area. Something some of us knew was going to happen, but it's starting to show. Studies are indicating that it is indeed happening. This is one of the insidious side effects of escalating market rates. Neighborhoods are shifting, demographics are shifting, and we're seeing resegregation in some areas, which really pains me, because in some areas we had reversed segregation. Not universally by any means in the Bay Area, but in some areas we had, but now we're seeing that being reversed, and it really is, it's a shame. There's no other way, I don't know what else to say about it. All right, anybody else here? We're gonna move to Igor? No? James? No? We're gonna move to the committee board meeting updates, budget and personnel.
No update for budget.
No update, right? Eviction, section 8, foreclosure.
We're meeting on the 13th
Of November, exactly, thank you. Habitable, sustainable.
Our meeting had to be canceled because we had a speaker who was not going to show up, and we need to set a new meeting date.
Okay, so there will be a new meeting date forthcoming.
Yes.
Thank you. IRA, AGA, registration.
We had our meeting on October 9th for October, and we don't have a date yet, as our normal time frame is the week of the election. So we'll be meeting sometime after the election.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Quick question. Do we need to chime in on the material for the possible special meeting?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
No, I mean, anything that is enacted at the special meeting or repealed would be by emergency order. So there would be no need to go through the committee process. The committee process essentially is a formality that the board has adopted in order to have an extra set of eyes on, policies and proposals and amendments before they actually are reviewed by the full board. There's nothing in the regulations which actually requires the committee to do it. It's just been the way that you all have done business for many years. And I mean, I wouldn't suggest, changing that, but for the special meeting, it would be only dealing with emergency orders of enactment or repeal, and that would definitely not go to a committee first.
Long-term changes, as far as how we would do things, would certainly would go back to the committee, and we'd have those discussions there. These would just be very pro forma types of changes to make sure that the regulations that are currently in place are consistent with what the ordinance says and state law allows.
It would be a first reading anyway, right?
No, actually, orders of repeal and enactment of emergency regulations provided for in Regulation 608, which you adjusted tonight, are effective immediately.
Okay.
They are effective only for 6 months, and the board has to adopt them permanently, which is something that I would bring to the board after adoption or repeal.
Great. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of make clear to everybody that we will have a chance to really dig into these if we end up doing this at all. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Anybody else here? So we have outreach?
Thank you. So the outreach actually met today. So thank you, Commissioners Murphy and Lavierde, for attending a meeting before this meeting. Super fun. We will be doing a tenant survey, looking into a landlord survey as well. We want to make sure that we track data so that way we can do policy recommendations. And we look forward to working with everybody after the results come in. Yes, that's it.
I'm going to skip through the rest of these. The 4x4, we don't have a date set. I think primarily we're waiting on the election for some of those ballot measures to figure out what to do next on the 4x4, because that will inform some of what we're doing, whether what passes, what doesn't pass, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't think there's any active meetings of any of the others on this list right now. So we'll skip through those unless somebody has a comment or a question. And then we go to, before adjournment, are we going to have closed session?
We are, if you wanted to announce before we adjourn where we'll be meeting and the
We're going
subject.
to be in the law, right, in the law office over at, what's the address?
2001 Center Street in
Thank
the Law
you,
Library.
2001 Center Street, thank you.
The Law Library on the second floor.
Right,
And that will take place after the close of this meeting.
which we can do right now, unless there's any other news or announcements. All right, we can adjourn. Thank you all.
Thank you. So the mics will not go off as they usually do, so just bear that in mind. Okay, it'll take me a while.
Oh, really?
8:20. 8:20, okay.
Hello?
The mics are on.
All right, everybody. Have a good day.
Contrary to the image out there, that's really what we try to do. There's no,
There's so much stuff. Like, I've only been managing this property for 3 years. I'm a tenant. The website's great for Iraq, but really, I made contact with Alice and all right. I'll send emails to you. So responsive to mail, I just thought you should have.
no, absolutely. Thank you so much for
I came down tonight, I thought, why are these people on this big auditorium, and I thought it was gonna be like some like pitchfork thing like
Because
that.
they're kicking us out and they're going to close the yard and that for years already. So if this works out, I'm not sure if it will. This is so much more convenient. Both the board,
I'll let everybody in. I saw that. What the fuck? That guy's 30.
I saw it like right in the middle, and I was like, that's a little inflammatory to me. Well, we'll see what happens. They put up some sign for some other auditor, which I was like, whatever. I guess if